Hey, what's going on, guys? This is TabMock99. Today, I'm going to tell you the story of how I first got into Mortal Kombat. Before I get into it, I do want to give a huge shout out to the Levitation Show for coming up with the idea to put all this together. Anyway, back when I first got into Mortal Kombat, this was Mortal Kombat 1, so I would have been like 10, 11 years old. This was 1993, so it just came out on the home systems. So it was out on Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, Game Boy, and Game Gear for a simultaneous release. I had a Super Nintendo, but my friends had a Sega Genesis, and it was at their house that I got into Mortal Kombat. So my two best friends, they were brothers. They were both Filipino. They had rented Mortal Kombat from Blockbuster. Yeah, if you can remember back when Blockbuster was a thing. So we had a bunch of people over. There were about like 8 or 9 of us, and we were all taking turns on Mortal Kombat. We were all taking turns just watching everybody else play, and we were just totally immersed in the gameplay. We weren't doing anything else. Remember, back then, people didn't have cell phones. People didn't have, well, I guess some people had computers, but nobody was checking their email, that's for sure. Everybody was just totally engrossed in Mortal Kombat. We were all fixated on the TV screen, back in those old CRT screens, the big tubes. So we were all taking turns. We were all playing all the different characters. Some people remember who their first character was. I don't. I don't know who I picked first, but I can tell you this. Scorpion's FataLKaDe was the first one I did. Somehow, everybody knew the blood code, the old ABAC, Everybody knew it, so we put it in right there at the Code of Honor screen, and then bam, we were all playing it. We were all playing it with all the blood, all the fatalities, all the gore, everything. Where were our parents during this time? Probably in the other room, not paying any attention. But we were all taking turns, we all bonded, we all had a great time, and I was immediately hooked. I knew for sure this game would be like my favorite game, the #1 game of all time. Now, I'd heard of Mortal Kombat before, but I'd never really given it a chance until this night. So remember, there was a huge advertising campaign by Acclaim. They had the commercials on TV. They had the magazine advertisements, the comic books. You couldn't get away from it. It was everywhere. You went to Toys R Us, you saw the strategy guides. You went to the bookstore, you saw the magazines. Everywhere you went, Mortal Kombat was like in your face. So there really was no getting away from it. And when I finally gave it a chance and I finally sunk my teeth into this game, bam, I was hooked for life. So that was it for me. And then when Mortal Kombat 2 came out, I went into the arcades one day randomly, and then there's a Mortal Kombat 2 machine. Like, no warning, no hype up for it. It's just all of a sudden it's there. And I can tell you this, for Mortal Kombat 2, the first character I picked was Katana. So I do remember that much. This is going back a long time now, but yeah, that's my earliest memory with Mortal Kombat. It was getting together with friends, a whole bunch of us taking turns, actually playing by the old arcade rules, you know. Winner plays, loser pays. That's the way it goes. No, it's not the way it goes. Winner stays, loser pays. That's it. Took me a minute. I thought of it. But yeah, that was how we did it, man. The winner got to play, and then the loser just had to get off until somebody, I think it was me, kept winning all the time. And then all of a sudden, everybody voted to throw that rule out the window. Otherwise, I'd be hogging the Sega Genesis all night. Anyway, it wasn't long until I finally got my own copy of Mortal Kombat for Super Nintendo. And that's when I found out that the blood's been removed. There's no blood code for the Super Nintendo version. What is this? But you know what? That's okay. The Super Nintendo version, despite the censorship, it was still pretty awesome. I mean, let's think about it. They didn't have Sub-Zero's spine rip, which is an iconic fatality, but they did have the freeze and shatter move. That's also iconic. I mean, that made its way into Mortal Kombat 2. That became Sub-Zero's new thing. That is a legitimate fatality that got into the franchise. Raiden's electricity didn't decapitate you in the Super Nintendo version. It turned you into a pile of dust. But that, too, became official. That's the one that they wrote into the song for Raiden for the Mortal Kombat, the album CD. It was, he turns his foes into a pile of dust. So despite the fact that it was censored, there was a lot that version of Mortal Kombat impacted the franchise and it influenced the franchise. And who knows what direction Mortal Kombat would have taken had Nintendo not taken the steps they did. Anyway, you know that the Sega Genesis version outsold the Super Nintendo like 4-1, maybe 8-1 in some places, or so I've read. So Nintendo learned their lesson real quick. They never censored another Mortal Kombat game after that. So that was it, guys. That was my earliest memories of Mortal Kombat. And I will tell you this, too. After getting into the game, I went all in. I mean, I was getting the comic books. I was getting the trading cards. I was just super engrossed into all things Mortal Kombat. Of course, the lore was like my biggest fascination with it. And I've been into the franchise ever since, all these years. So that's my story. Take it easy. I'll see you at the next video.
Hey everyone, it's the Levitation Show. I came up with the idea to do this little video / project, whatever we want to call it, because I was saying, could I come up with a collab to do with Tabmark? And then I thought, why not just get everyone in the Mortal Kombat community talking about, how they found Mortal Kombat, because I've never seen a video like that, so why not? So yeah, now it's going to be, how did I find Mortal Kombat? And the answer to that was 2006 when I was 5. I first got the original Xbox and I was at a pawn shop. No, not the pawn shop you're thinking of. Not the pawn you're thinking of. Get your mind out of the gutter if you're thinking that. And if you're not, then good. You know what I was talking about. Place where you buy and sell things, so on and so forth. Anyway, I was looking for original Xbox games. Back then they were cheap. And I found Mortal Kombat. 5-year-old me did not know what Mortal Kombat was, or there was a fighting game. I just saw a dragon and I wanted that game. My dad tried to get me to get a cartoon blue dragon game, but I was like, no. I was dead set on getting Mortal Kombat Deception. And yes, it was violent, and yes, I shouldn't have been playing it, but who cares? Who cares? I got it anyway. And so, started playing Mortal Kombat, and I've been doing playing Mortal Kombat games ever since. Also, the Mortal Kombat movie trailer I saw was great. That was great. And so I'm going to be doing a lot more Mortal Kombat videos in the coming weeks, months, years, whatever. So if you haven't seen my Mortal Kombat videos I've done so far, well, why don't you go ahead and watch them? Why don't you subscribe to my YouTube channel, The Levitation Show? And it's been great, talking to you. See you later, I guess.
Yo, what is cracking, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Payne for Payne Gaming, and I'm here to talk about my very first experience with Mortal Kombat. The Levitation Show is basically doing this video, which is really cool. I think it's going to be pretty cool to see everyone else's stories as well. So, my very first experience with Mortal Kombat ever was, I was about 3.5 years old. Yes, 3.5 years old, all the way back then. And came home from junior infants, which is kind of like a crash, but like in primary school, it was like junior, senior infants, and then first class, second class, third class, etc., etc. So yeah, I came back from like junior infants and came into the kitchen, and my dad was there, and he had a plastic bag in his hand, and he said, one of the lads at work didn't want this, and I said, you'd probably take it. So take it, open it. It's a Sega, load of games. I was so happy. So I ran into the other room anyway, plugged it in. Now I'd only really seen. I think I'd seen it somewhere. I seen the thing somewhere, so I wasn't really 100% sure what it was. Obviously, because I was like 3.5. So I plugged it in anyway into the TV. Very first game I think I played was Columns. I think it was. It was like a 3. It was a 3 set. There was Shinobi, Columns, and Streets of Rage. I think it was. And then I think I moved on to Sonic after that. And eventually I got around to Mortal Kombat 1. And I played it. Really enjoyed it. Thought it was awesome. I mean, it was like ninjas and a tournament and Goro and all that sort of stuff, and Shang Tsung with the sorcerer and all. So like, I'm mad into magic and myth and all that sort of stuff. So anything like that would be really awesome. So I thought it was cool. And then it was only really like about maybe a year later or so, we were down in a summer camp in the leisure center in Arklow. And it was funny. I got to know the teacher fairly well. Because he was a gamer and stuff like that. And he goes to me, he's like, do you ever play Mortal Kombat? I was like, I love that game. And he's like, have you ever activated the blood code? And I'm like, sorry? It's like real into it, like, sorry. So he goes to me, yeah, if like when the grey screen comes up and the writing starts, basically press A, B, A, C, A, B, B, and it should turn red, and you should hear Scorpion say, get over here. And if you did that, he'll activate it. And I was like, okay. So I went home, and I remember I had, like, the way the internet wasn't a thing back then. So I had this massive, like, cheat book, I think it was. And it wasn't a cheat book, it was a move book of all the characters' moves and stuff like that. So I knew how to do all the fatalities and all. But, like, they never really worked for me. So I was always really kind of annoyed why I thought I was doing it wrong. But once he activated the blood cheat code, holy shit, does it work. And then some. At least I think it was that. I think it was worked. It was either it worked or they weren't as violent. I know, like, when Kano took out, like, the heart, it was just a grey thing in his hand. So, like, that worked eventually. But I could never really get Sub-Zero's, like, head rip to work. But then when I put in the blood code, it seemed to work. So I don't know if that was a thing, if it was just myself. But no, ever since then, that once the blood cheat kind of got activated, I just got into it a bit more. I don't know. Maybe I was a crazy kid back then. But like, obviously, it didn't have any sort of effect that I wanted to go out and start killing people or something like that. I was like, no, I knew the difference between a game and reality, sort of way back then. But no, that just took off my love of Mortal Kombat even more. Like, and then Mortal Kombat 2 came out, and I was able to get that, and 3 and 4 and all the ones in the thing. It was kind of crazy. Like, I was wondering like how I was able to get these, because like my parents were fairly strict back then. Like, we made sure we did our homework and all that sort of stuff. But when it came to video games, they weren't too mad strict in terms of age rating and stuff like that. They knew, obviously, 16s, 18s, and we kind of knew back then what was right and what was wrong and that sort of stuff. I'll actually give you a good story. I went into this was back when Mortal Kombat Deception came out. I went to go into town, and because I wasn't 18, I think I was like 16 or 17 at the time. Your man was like, "Sorry, man, can't sell it to you." And I was like, "Oh, come on." He's like, "Yeah, sorry." So I went upstairs and I rang my mom, and I was like, "Come into town now and buy me this game." And she was like, "Feck off." I was like, "Okay, fine." And then I was like, "Right, I'm gonna try this one more time," because see, they had a bottom floor of the shop, which was all the games and stuff, and they had a top floor of the shop, which was all the music CDs and stuff like that. So they had the game on the top floor as well as the bottom floor as well. So I was like, I'll give this another go. So I took it anyway. I went up to the girl at the cashier, and she was like, "Yeah, sure, no problem. That's €50, blah. That's grand. Here you go. Thanks for watching. Thanks for shopping. Bye bye." And off I went. I was like, "Oh my god!" And I was like, "Please don't let her get sacked." Because it's a thing. Obviously, you're not over 18. You shouldn't be buying these things really, but it is the cashier's job to not sell it to you. I was kind of feeling bad, but then I was too over the moon that I got Mortal Kombat Deception, so like I ran home to play it and all that sort of stuff. But like, that's probably my real quick video of my very first experience with Mortal Kombat. Was when I was 3.5, and my dad brought home a Sega because one of the guys in work didn't want it, and Mortal Kombat 1 was in the bag. And ever since then, I've loved the Mortal Kombat games. I've loved the way the team have brought it. I've always wanted to meet the likes of Ed Boon and stuff like that, and I'm hoping to fulfill that wish at some stage when this COVID thing affects off and I go to one of the gaming conventions or something like that. Anyway, fingers crossed. But anyway, guys, my name is Payne. That is my first experience with Mortal Kombat. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of everyone else's stories. I'm sure they're going to be awesome. Talk to you then. Bye!
Hey guys, it's MK Jasper, and this is how I got into Mortal Kombat. It was 1993, I was 12 years old, and I always went to a local video store to rent video games for the Super Nintendo. And one day I saw Mortal Kombat at the new arrival section. And it looked cool, I brought it with me, played it with a friend, and we both loved it very much. Back then we didn't know about the fatalities and the blood for the other systems and for the arcade. But the next day I had to bring it back, but I went straight to the local toy store and I bought the game, and we played it every day after school. And one day we were playing, and I performed a finishing move with Johnny Cage, and we looked at each other like, what the hell happened? And we were amazed. I wanted to know all the finishing moves from the other characters as well, so I wrote a letter to the Dutch Club Nintendo, and I asked if they knew about the codes and everything and all the secrets. And like 2 weeks later, I got a letter back with everything inside, all the secrets, all the special moves, all the finishing moves, and also a thank you letter for sending them a letter. So it was very cool. And we played it a lot. And then Mortal Kombat 2 came out, also on the arcade. I played on the arcade, and it was amazing. The first time also in the arcade with blood. And when it was released on the home systems, I bought it for the Super Nintendo. And I wrote a letter again to Club Nintendo, and they sent a letter back, so it was awesome as well. This is how I rolled in. I remember also when MK3 came out, I was on holiday with my parents, And I wanted to go back because the game was just released on the home systems, but I had to wait. So when we came back, I directly went to the toy store again and I bought Mortal Kombat 3 and played it again. Loved it very much as well. And yeah, I also saw both movies, 1995 and 97 movies at the theaters. Also an amazing experience. And yeah, that's a little bit how I roll into Mortal Kombat. My friends liked it, but not as much as me. So I was the only one who always bought the games. So yeah, playing against them wasn't really a contest because they didn't play it much. But I always loved playing it. And back in '95, when the MK Live 2 was announced, I was very excited. Me and my cousin bought tickets, but unfortunately, the show was cancelled over here, so we never went. So that's too bad. And collecting MK stuff here in the Netherlands back then, there wasn't much around besides the games, video games, the movies. We had like the Panini sticker album, and that was about it. Yeah, we had some trilogy figures. There wasn't much. The cool thing we had is the VHS double pack Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 the movie. So that's a cool thing. So later on when EA was there, I bought a lot of stuff from outside the Netherlands, and that's how my collection grew. And also with social media, I met on a lot of other MK fans and collectors, and with some of them I became very good friends, and also to meet the MK actors from the games. So that's also a cool thing. So yeah, that's a story of me. Okay.
My journey of getting into Mortal Kombat was quite a strange and weird one. One day I was sitting in front of my television watching the Mortal Kombat movie, and I remember being absolutely mesmerized in the 1995 film when Sub-Zero froze the dude that was flexing and crushed him with a single ice ball. From that very moment, my interest in the franchise was just lit, and really it kind of served as a catalyst for interest in later years of the franchise. From there, I stopped being a Mortal Kombat fan for quite a while because I was very young. My parents saw what happened on the TV and they just turned it off and were like, nope, you're not watching that. You're not watching that. Which is quite funny in that sense considering what I do now. As a young teenager, I went over to my cousin's house at the age of 12 or 14, and I was once again exposed to the world of Mortal Kombat through the form of Mortal Kombat Deception. This was of course a series I hadn't seen in nearly a decade, so understandably a lot had changed from what I had seen up to that point, and it naturally just like sparked my interest again. I was absolutely terrible at the game. I had no idea what was going on, didn't really know how to unlock all the characters, but I was still mesmerized by the character designs, world, and just the combat itself. Inevitably, we got to the point where Mortal Kombat 9 was around the corner, and once again, my interest was invigorated. The funny story is, from what you can tell of my parents, they obviously didn't want to buy me the game, so I got my friend's mom to buy it for me. So from what you can tell, I was a Mortal Kombat fan through and through at that point in time, and from there, I paid very close attention to NetherRealm Studio. Of course, this meant that I played through MK9 as well as Injustice 1, but it wasn't truly till MKX where my channel was born. At university, I wanted to understand more about the franchise, what made characters. And when I tried to look up said videos on YouTube about the characters, I simply could not find any. And that's why I came to the realization that I couldn't have been the only person looking for said videos. So I took it upon myself to make creative fun lore videos in order to educate newer fans of the series, as well as re-educate some of the older fans who may have dropped off considering how old the series actually is. From there, it's, no pun intended, just been history. And I would not be where I am right now in my life without Mortal Kombat. It's pretty incredible when I think about it that Mortal Kombat has actually changed my life. One game which I was told to never ever touch, play or watch would be the catalyst for what allows me to do basically everything I do. So Mortal Kombat to me means more than any franchise ever could. It has transformed my life, and I simply wouldn't be in the position I am now if it wasn't for Ed Boon, John Tobias, or NetherRealm as a whole. It's pretty crazy in this instance, but one game created by a very, very small dev team could have this big of an impact on so many people.
Hi, I'm the Fourth Snake, and this is my GMVQ raiding costume. Hope you like it. And this is my history with MK, which goes back to MK4 on the PC. One day my dad just randomly bought it for me. I was about 6 or 7 at the time. It may have messed me up, I don't know. This is actually that same copy I got way back in the day. I've just held on to it ever since. The first character I played as was my man Johnny Cage, because, well, cool dude with sunglasses. You know, I was in that phase. I wasn't quite into ninjas yet. This wasn't the game that got me into MK, because it was fine. I wasn't particularly blown away by it. What I liked more was when I got this set of 10 Dreamcast games, and one of them was MK Gold, the enhanced version of this, and I liked that a lot more. Partly because I had the cheats, so I could easily just beat Goro and Shinnok, and it was all great. I quite enjoyed it. But what really got me into MK was a year or two later. So this would have been around 2002, 2003, when I saw MK Deadly Alliance for 20 quid in the shop. And I thought, that's not a bad price. I quite like the MK game I got on the Dreamcast. I'll give this one a go. Thank God I did, because it's really good. It was a great new direction for the series. It had so much content, and it was a bold new direction for the story with the deaths of the main protagonists and antagonists to set up this new threat. The gameplay was like, unlike anything else. I mean, I think an issue that the fighting game genre has nowadays is that a lot of them play a bit too similar to one another, whereas back then, like, nothing else played like this. Even other fighting games with 3D movement, like Soul Calibur, like Tekken was starting to experiment with, even they didn't feel like this. And you had the multiple fighting styles with character, some really cool designs. Honestly, the 3D era had some of the best designs in the franchise. It was a great start for what would become, in my opinion, the best gameplay of the entire series, particularly in the next game, Deception. And I remember I had this DVD that had like 5 different things on it relating to Deception, like a trailer and featurettes and all sorts of stuff. And I watched those over and over again because I was so excited for the game. And when it finally dropped in 2004, it more than lived up to my expectations. It had so many modes, so much stuff to do. You know, the actual content, different modes, different styles of play, which unfortunately the modern games just don't really have anymore. You know, that was just some phenomenal stuff, and it was probably the best version of that gameplay, Armageddon. You know, it wasn't quite as good. It made a few changes that I wasn't too fond of, like the aerial combat I thought was a bit too gimmicky. But Deception is one of my favourite games of all time. It's easily in my top 3 fighting games ever, along with Soul Calibur 3 and Tekken 5. Well, Tekken 5 Dark Resurrection. Also one of my favourite games in general. I wish we would get some kind of remaster. Fighting games don't really get remasters anymore, but for me that was the peak of the series, back in that period when we were getting Deception, Shaolin Monks, Armageddon, because for their flaws they were still genuinely good games. I quite enjoyed MK vs DCU, but it was a lot more shallow in terms of its gameplay and its presentation, but it was still fine. Then we got MK9, and I really didn't like the direction of the gameplay or the story, and so I dropped off MK. Then when I got MKXL, when that came out in 2016, I started making videos like Wasted Potential and stuff, and that's when I started to get back into the MK community. Back in the day with Deception, I was checking MK fan sites every day. Like, there were like 6 of them, like the Combat Pavilion, MK Warehouse, Mortal Kombat.de. So many good sites. It was really great to be part of the fandom back in the midway era. And I started to get back into it somewhat in the NetherRealm era after I started doing Wasted Potential. It's not quite the same because I still don't really have that same enthusiasm for the newer stuff, but I still adore MK as a franchise. It's something I actually appreciate about the host of this video. Even someone like me who is highly critical of the newer games, he's recognised that I am a big fan of the series and have something to offer, like a perspective that perhaps isn't as well represented. Not to make myself sound like I'm anything special, it's just I appreciate the opportunity to come here and talk about how I got into MK, how I really fell in love with it, how it became my favourite franchise in any medium, how I fell off and then came back. I'm grateful for the opportunity. Please subscribe, not just to me, but to Tadmock as well. He's the real hero. Is there anyone else in the community who is as respected as this guy for his knowledge and his passion, and really for creating the Combat Pavilion and giving MK fans a place to show their creative sides and their love for the franchise? You know, before nowadays where you just make a video and put it on YouTube, back then it wasn't so easy, and this was just a place you could go to find that kind of stuff. You know, I made a Sprite comic back in the day, and it was cringy, and I hate it. And it didn't make it onto the site, even though I emailed it in, and I'm so glad it didn't. But I'm grateful for everything Tadmock has done for this community, including just even something simple as giving me a chance to talk about MK and blow up the video. I'm going to stop now. Thank you.
Hey guys, it's me. It's Toasty, diehard Mortal Kombat fan and co-host of Kombatants podcast. If you haven't checked out the channel, please follow the link attached to my profile. I'm making this video today because I want to tell you the story of how Mortal Kombat changed my life. The story begins in 1996. I was 4 years old. I may have been young, but I still remember it very vividly. I was basically new to school in kindergarten at this time. I remember it was a weekend, and I was sitting on the carpet floor waiting for my dad to arrive, as he had mentioned he wanted to show me something. Out of this box, he unraveled a Super Nintendo. With it came a mysterious game with a dragon logo on it, and its cover said Mortal Kombat. Little did I know just how much this game would affect my life. Upon starting it, me and my father entered two-player mode. I immediately had chills down my spine hearing the iconic menu theme, while also viewing some really cool depictions of what looked like ninjas. The first character I chose was Kano. I loved each and every single character in this game. The unique atmosphere of each and every single individual really just stuck out to me and got me hooked. It literally felt like this game was made for me. It was only months after where I arrived at my best friend's house and was shown Mortal Kombat 2. Considering the MK1 port of SNES had no blood, man, was I in for a surprise. I specifically remember the darkened tone that was brought to this title and the excessive amounts of blood that would appear. Not only this, but the introductions of new characters, it made me ecstatic. Considering for months I was playing the first game religiously, these characters legitimately started to feel like family. So to see all these new additions really opened up my eyes. I was reminded, after seeing all these mysterious characters hidden behind trees in the living forest and so forth, there's just so much more than what meets the eye here. There's a vast world to delve into, and I want to be a part of it. Being the incredibly loyal friend I am, I then stole the game from my best friend. You think I'm joking? I'm not. I remember him uttering in school that he was mad that the game was missing. It was gone for at least 6 months. Little did he know I kept it hidden at my house. Whenever he would come over, I would hide it under the mattress to my bunk bed. I brought it back, so MK2 was in such high demand here in my region of Canada that it was practically unattainable. In a local gaming store, I eventually found MK3 on the SNES, and I was hooked. The inclusion of combos made it even more exciting to me, alongside the new kinds of alities that were introduced. I was so busy gaming for so long that I was practically secluded from the outside world. I literally had no idea that there were Mortal Kombat films. The day I found out, it was my very kind mother who told me that there are movies based off the franchise. I just about had a heart attack. My love, my passion, my world is also in a movie? I then remember going to the movie rental shop and renting the two movies. This was one of the most extraordinary days of my life, as the first movie to this day remains one of my all-time favorites and has changed me immensely. I watch this in tradition every year, most certainly, and Annihilation as well, actually, just for a good laugh, because it's one of those precious gems that is so bad that it's good. It was due to the movies that I decided I wanted to be just like them. It was barely a few years later in school that I would often pretend I was a Mortal Kombat character. Later on in life, I would also take up some Wadokai karate alongside some kickboxing and Wing Chun. I was playing on the arcades at that point, of course, with my father. Yeah, I was Quan Chi, he was always Reptile. As a very young child, I remember kind of being freaked out by MK4. By far the darkest of the franchise. A lot of the music was very haunting. I remember helplessly falling to your imminent death only to be viciously impaled by spikes. That gave me chills. Let's not forget the living freaking forest. Hell, I still get nightmares from the petrifying laughs and faces that were within that arena. Late 1998, the best thing in the entire franchise came to be, at least in my heart. The ever so lovely, phenomenal Mortal Kombat Conquest television show. I thoroughly remember watching the trailer in absolute awe with what I was seeing. I specifically remember hearing Kevin Michael Richardson's iconic voice stating, "You've seen the movies, you've played the games, but nothing can prepare you for this." Lo and behold, they were right. I consider myself the CEO of Conquest fans. I go berserk for this show. I watch it multiple times per year, and ultimately I've seen this show more times than I can count. I love a lot of the intriguing individual stories that are placed within it, even if they don't always quite match up to the game's lore. Jeffrey Meek and Adani Meropis have become some of my all-time favorite actors, and as a kid, I highly looked up to them. It was also a tremendous pleasure to recently speak with Adani Meropis himself, who portrayed Quan Chi, on the Kombatants podcast. We have another great guest from that show, actually coming very soon, and we learned some new info. So that I'm very excited to show to you. Years back, when I was extremely involved with the message boards and such, I was very involved with Kamidogu. I was one of the most active members on the site. Eventually, I made my way up. I became a moderator and, hell, even an administrator for a little while. I became very close with Christopher Veljanovsky, who's the webmaster of that site, and we became really close over the years. It feels so great to be a part of and engaged with this community on Twitter now. Getting back into the swing of things with this podcast and interacting with you all has been one of the greatest opportunities. I once actually had a chance to fly down to Midway Studios back in the day to meet the team there, but unfortunately I was financially unstable and just not in the right position in my life. Mortal Kombat still plays a pivotal role. Admittedly, in terms of the games, I was much more into the 3D era as opposed to what we currently have going on now. The originals, of course, paved the way, so those are very important to me as well. I really liked, that PS2 generation. Those were the greatest of all time for me because it had such a rich variety of things to do, a ridiculously addictive conquest mode, and some great new character additions. Alas, I still do play the new ones and enjoy them. However, the new movie that has come out brought a lot of new life, and I can see a lot of greatness within this live-action universe. The franchise surrounds me every day, as I like to buy a lot of the neat collectibles that come out, and I have them spread throughout. And my whole body is practically covered in Mortal Kombat tattoos. I made sure to get a black dragon tattoo on my neck. Remember I told you how Kano was my first character I chose? Yeah, well, I wanted to make sure to honor that. I'm one of those type of people that can say Mortal Kombat is in my DNA. I cannot picture my life without it. As once said in the Deadly Alliance by Raiden himself, Mortal Kombat has always been and always will be. Thank you so much for watching my fellow combatants. Until next time, have fun, stay safe, and stay flawless.
Hello guys, what is up? I'm FataLKaDe, and I am going to tell you my history with Mortal Kombat and what it means to me as the series that we love and care about. Now, if you guys don't know, I started playing Mortal Kombat with Mortal Kombat Trilogy for the PlayStation 1. Not only was Trilogy the first Mortal Kombat game I ever played, it was also the first video game I have ever played. What ended up happening is that my dad selected Scorpion as Scorpion was his main character, and I kind of picked up the controller after he went to the bathroom. So while I was playing it, I didn't know what I was doing. I got my ass absolutely handed to, but I knew one thing: I loved Mortal Kombat. Now, of course, my dad coming back to see me play it wasn't angry or anything. He didn't take the controller away. He was actually going to teach me how to play, since, you know, I've been watching him for a long time. And not only did Trilogy just spark my love for Mortal Kombat, the future of Mortal Kombat as well. Of course, as you guys know, after the PlayStation 1, I got a PlayStation 2. And my favorite era of Mortal Kombat is the PlayStation 2 era, aka the 3D era. The 3D era I have a lot of respect for when it comes to the changes in the story that they did, of course, killing off Liu Kang and Shao Kahn, and also in turn making the good guys lose. It was a huge thing that has happened in the Mortal Kombat franchise. And I say that the 3D era, other than Mythologies, is one of the biggest things that happened to Mortal Kombat in the story mode department. So what does Mortal Kombat mean to me? Of course, it means community. We have a lot of great people in the community, either it's content creators, whether it's tournament players, whether it's show hosts, whether it's people that make stuff like the 3D prints and whatnot. You know, we have a big community here, and it is very, very awesome that we are just so. And it's awesome that we're just so involved with the community, and it's very, very nice that we have a good relationship with the devs, that we have a good relationship with the community, with the players, with everything. Another thing that means a lot to me as a Mortal Kombat fan is the history. If you guys don't know, Mortal Kombat was what put the ESRB, that and Lethal Enforcement, onto the map when it comes to violence in video games, and also Night Trap. I did forget Night Trap, but you know, not only the ESRB, it launched fighting games into the mainstream that wasn't Street Fighter. It was different from Street Fighter. It in turn made Mortal Kombat clones like Tattoo Fighters, and it's just. So, and that was just the arcade era. Then you have like the monumental moment that was Mortal Kombat versus DC. Then you have them coming in with guest characters in Mortal Kombat 9 like Kratos and Freddy Krueger. And now we have Predator, Alien in one game, and then we have Rambo and Terminator in another. And it's just really, really, really awesome that we get to have this as a history. Of course, you know, we have a spanning more of 25 years, and I even did a show called Mortal Monday with yours truly, Tabmock99, to basically cover the entire history of Mortal Kombat. You know, we've played 1, 2, 3, we've played Special Forces, Mythologies, MK versus DC, MKX, and even Mortal Kombat 11. We've covered everything when it came to Mortal Kombat history, and it's really, really awesome that, you know, Mortal Kombat has this 25 plus year history to it. What also means a lot to me as a Mortal Kombat fan is how I started as a content creator. I didn't start out as a Call of Duty or a commentary channel. I started out as a Mortal Kombat player. I made combo videos and then made a series called Fan Fight Friday with 2 of my friends. And it's launched me now to the point where now I'm a part of Mortal Kombat Online, which, if you don't know, Mortal Kombat Online is the biggest and longest running Mortal Kombat fan site that is here today. I mean, hell, if you guys don't know the history with Mortal Kombat Online, that was kind of the first reveal of Mortal Kombat Deception. So to me, it's not the fact that Mortal Kombat is like just a game to me. It's practically my life. I mean, as you can see here, I have all of this stuff. My arcade stick, my Jade statue, my Japanese Mortal Kombat Akame, the movie pop figurines, the collector's editions. I even went to Combo Breaker with a bunch of my content creator friends. Mortal Kombat means so much to me as my entire life basically is Mortal Kombat. It's really, really awesome, and I'm very, very happy to be a Mortal Kombat fan. I just can't wait for the future of Mortal Kombat. I can't wait to see what happens in the future. And that is my history with Mortal Kombat, and that's what Mortal Kombat means to me. It means community. It means love. It means starting somewhere from small beginnings, just like the development team of the first game, now rising to this big thing. Now, I want to take it right back to you, Tabmock. See you later.
So the first time that I ever played or saw Mortal Kombat was in the early 90s. So I remember it like yesterday. We had just gotten done with church, and then typically after church we would go, to a restaurant with my family. We would eat dinner somewhere, and this time we went to Pizza Hut. Back in the early 90s, you'll remember Pizza Hut had like all the cool red cups, and they had like the buffet that you could go up and, just pick and grab things from, which was pretty awesome. But they also used to have arcade machines. Actually, some of them I think still do have arcade machines in them. But I saw a Mortal Kombat 1 arcade machine in the wild at Pizza Hut. And I walked through the door. I saw that arcade machine. I saw, somebody get uppercutted and blood fly everywhere. And my eyes just like lit up. And my mom saw me and looked at my reaction and looked at me and looked at my dad and said, absolutely not. So, we went and we sat down and we ordered our food, and my mom and my sister went off with their church friends off on one side of the restaurant, and me and my dad sat down on the other side of the restaurant. And they had the arcade machine kind of in the corner there, and then in the other corner they had like a jukebox machine, and they had like, some bubble gum in those little machines. And I remember I looked at my dad and I was like, Dad, can I get 2 quarters? And he looked at me and he's like, Bud, your mom said no, you can't play it, it's too violent. I was like, no. And I was thinking fast, and I said, I want to get a gumball out of the machine. And my dad's like, okay. He gives me 2 quarters, and I act like I'm going off towards the gumballs. And my dad's turning around watching me, And then he turns his head back and starts talking to his friend. And as soon as I saw my dad turn away from me and start talking to his friend, I beelined it straight for the Mortal Kombat machine, threw in those 2 quarters. It got to the character select. The problem for me is I was a short kid, so I was like standing on my tippy toes, like trying to get the buttons, and I was, getting there. And then I see my dad like walk right past me, and I'm like, oh crap, I'm so busted. I'm in so much trouble. And my dad talks to the guy behind the counter at Pizza Hut, and he got one of those booster chairs that you'd sit in, and he puts it under my feet. He's like, here bud, stand on this. And he puts it under my feet. He's like, this will probably help you play better. And then Dad threw 2 quarters in. He picked Sub-Zero, I picked Johnny Cage, and from that moment on I was hooked. I remember it like it was yesterday. That had such an impact on me. This game had such an impact on me that decades later, I am still in love with this game. I'm extremely passionate about everything to do with Mortal Kombat. And, just to the developers and the people that were involved in creating this game, like, thank you so much. Because of you, I now have some of the most awesome friends in Australia, in New Zealand, in Korea, in Germany, all over the world. So thank you guys for igniting all of that magic in the early 90s. It's pretty awesome.
Hey, what's going on? This is MK Fraysol. Wanted to share my Mortal Kombat experience of being a fan and a collector of the Mortal Kombat series. And many of you know me from the Mortal Kombat Online community or the mk5.org forums and other places, and also have met me at Combat Con in 2016, 17, and hopefully that will return. But for me and Mortal Kombat, when I first got introduced was back when the original MK was released. I always read magazines and read about Mortal Kombat being this cool martial arts game, reflective of Street Fighter and other fighting games, and that there was this violence about it that kind of gave it its own uniqueness, in other words. And so that was some of the things that got me hooked. Besides seeing the pictures of now the well-known, ninjas of Scorpion and Sub-Zero, and it's just one of the things that inspired me to get into computers. But I took a different route, obviously, with going into IT instead of software development, in other words. But just Mortal Kombat is one of my favorites. Things to look out for and always collect. Always seeing what they come up with in new iterations of the game, with characters and everything. So something I really enjoy just having around and collecting. As you can see here in my, I call this my combat cave. So, and I also love to share it with everybody. So I do a series and episodes of the Mortal Kombat Collector series. You can find me on YouTube and the Mortal Kombat Collector Fraysol, or you can find me on my on YouTube as Fraysol83. But Fraysol is my common nickname that you can find me at. I'm very active on the collector sites. Trying to help friends out here locally, nationally, and overseas if I can. And the same thing overseas, that I ask for their help. And we have this great community that brings us together. Who knew that, a little bit of violence can bring people together. Until next time.
Hey everyone, this is Carlos, also known as Uncanny Carlos. The question, how did I first get into Mortal Kombat? Or when did I first get into Mortal Kombat? And that is a question that's very difficult to answer, because I feel like Mortal Kombat has been in my life since I was a kid. It's a little bit of a blur because I was such a young kid when I got into Mortal Kombat. My older cousin, Alex, he was the one that got everybody in my family, meaning my cousins, myself, my siblings, into Mortal Kombat. My cousin Alex got to experience the golden era of Mortal Kombat in the arcades. He used to compete in tournaments at arcades, and of course he owned all the Mortal Kombat games in the consoles. So as a little kid, I must have been 4 or 5 years old. I was born in 91. I remember playing Mortal Kombat with my cousin Alex in his room. We used to play Mortal Kombat 2, but especially Ultimate Mortal Kombat and Mortal Kombat Trilogy were the games that we used to play. Alex had the sickest Cabal combos, and also Sindel. Those were his two main characters. My main character since I was a little kid has always been Kitana. The Edenian Princess has always been my main since I was a little kid. Just such a amazing character that I fell in love with right from the beginning. And to this day, I'm still a massive Kitana fan. As you can see, I have many Kitana art pieces. And that was the beginning of my love for Mortal Kombat. And ever since, I have loved Mortal Kombat. Every game that came out, I would pre-order. I always get the collector's edition. Mortal Kombat is definitely my favorite franchise. In my family and my group of friends, I'm known as the crazy Mortal Kombat fan who maybe a little over the top, but you know, I don't care. I just love Mortal Kombat. What's interesting is that now the kids in my family, my little nieces, my little nephews, they see their uncle, this massive Mortal Kombat fan, and they're also huge Mortal Kombat fans. They always want to play Mortal Kombat with me, and they admire my statues, my collection. You know, it's become like a family tradition. It's in our family now. So that is my story of how I first got into Mortal Kombat. It's not really much of a story. It's more of a just blurry memories of playing with my cousin when I was 4 or 5 years old, and ever since I've continued to love Mortal Kombat.
Hello, my name is Daniel Clark. I was the winner of GameSpot.com's Ultimate Mortal Kombat Fanatic contest, and I have been a fan of the Mortal Kombat series since the very first installment. I first found out about Mortal Kombat at a bowling alley in New Jersey. I was there with my family, and we had just finished bowling a game, and we were taking a little break during this time. I decided I was going to take a walk around the alley and maybe go and see what those 3 arcade games that I noticed when we came into the alley were. So I go over there, and the first one was a Neo Geo cabinet. The second one was NBA Jam, and the third one was a game that looked very much like Street Fighter, but with much more realistic looking characters. That, of course, would turn out to be Mortal Kombat 1. And I did not play it at the time, but I did see the attract mode. I actually went over and played NBA Jam, which was the cabinet that was in the middle of the other two. And I would take a couple of peeks over at the Mortal Kombat machine to see what that was about. And in addition to the realistic looking characters and environments, the violence factor was much higher in this game too. So I eventually finished up my NBA Jam session, and at one point somebody actually comes over and pops a quarter into this Mortal Kombat machine. So I decide to take a look and see what it's about when somebody actually plays through it. And man, oh man, what I saw was some very brutal stuff right there. I see this person come over and pick a character who, in his picture, wears a pair of sunglasses, and whose name in his energy bar looks more like an object rather than a name. I'm like, the guy's name is Cage? You're playing as a Cage? That's strange. Well, not nearly as strange as what I would see next when he finishes the round, he finishes the match against his opponent, and these big flashing words that read, "Finish him," come up. And what does he do next? He has this Cage guy just wind up and boom! Uppercut the defeated opponent's head clean off of their shoulders. I'm thinking, what kind of a game is this? Like I said, though, this would not be the first place where I would play the game. No. That would actually come about maybe 6 months later or so, when my parents took me and a couple of my friends to our favorite restaurant in the City Island section of the Bronx, New York, Tony's Pier. And they always had lots of arcade games there, everything from Ninja Turtles to NBA Jam to Street Fighter to Operation Wolf, Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, you name it. And on this particular day, I find that, hey, that's the game that I saw in the bowling alley months ago. That's Mortal Kombat. And one of my friends is like, hey, they spelled combat wrong. I'm like, yeah, they did, didn't they? That's kind of funny. And it was interesting because it wasn't in the traditional Mortal Kombat cabinet. It was actually in one of those generic-looking cabinets where, you know, they give you a custom marquee to put whatever name you want into it or something like that. So that's actually how I remember it being in Tony's right there. So this was where I first got to play the game. And like any game that I'm just finding out about and getting to play for the very first time, I didn't know anything about the story or the characters or anything like that. So in choosing who I wanted to play as, I read the bios beforehand, and I took a look at the pictures, and I ultimately settled on the only female character in the game, who went by the name Sonya Blade. And the reason why I chose her was, well, there were multiple reasons. One, her bio says that she's a U.S. Marine and that she's in the tournament to rescue her comrades. And in some of her pictures, she has the American flag behind her. So I thought to myself, well, it's a pretty safe bet that she's a good guy, that she's on the hero side. So that's who I'm going to go with. And the other reason was because I just thought that she was really attractive. So, you know, there you go. And then the rest, as they say, is history. I would play the game, I would love it, I would play all the subsequent games, and my parents would buy me all the Super Nintendo ports of the games, and the story continues from there. So, I hope you enjoyed this little trip down mortal memory lane with me. I know I sure enjoyed reminiscing about it, and I wish you all an excellent day. Thank you very much for watching.
What up, y'all? This is Mad Mike, and today I'm going to tell you a story on how I first got into Mortal Kombat. But before that, I want to give a shout out to my good friend TabMog99 for giving me the opportunity to participate and telling my story on my introduction to the series. So here we go. So this is around like 1996. I was 4 years old. So because Mortal Kombat came out in 92. I was born 6 months before that, before the release. So around like April of 92. That's like my birth month. So anyway, I was 4 years old, and I was with one of my childhood friends. I was at his crib, Matthew, shout out to him, and he had like different Super Nintendo games. Like he had like Super Mario Kart, Super Mario World, and he had Mortal Kombat 2. So I was just interested on what that game was. Like the presentation and stuff, the first time I ever saw it was like the introduction with like the dark clouds and the lightning bolt and lightning bolt making a number 2 and stuff. It's like, it's just really sick. Like, you know, you're about to get into like a whole lot of mess. And I can't remember the first time, like which character I played. I think it was Johnny Cage. It was just, he just looks so sick, like with the shades and stuff like that. I was just button mashing with the character, and like along the way there was like blood would being poured out, and blood would being poured out, and there was just a whole lot of blood that was just going on, and it's like, oh my god. And not only that, it's just like it was real, like real people. It was like real people just like kind of like fighting against each other and stuff like that. Like it was like really sick compared to like with Street Fighter. It was like more cartoonish. There was like sparks and there's like fireballs and stuff like that. But Mortal Kombat, it was just like real people. It was like, that was like really unique, and that's like what I like about it. And not just that, it was just like the roster, like the characters and stuff, it kind of just like pulls you in. Like for example, like the ninjas in the game, like with Scorpion, Sub-Zero, like those two, like they were pretty sick, and I love ninjas. Like I'm like a sucker for ninjas, and like it's so pretty sick to where like along the series and stuff, how it evolved, like there was more ninjas came in throughout the series. It's like with Smoke, Ermac, New Sabot, and it was just like it went bananas. But anyway, like I think during that year, I think around one day at a local mall, my mom took me at arcade. So there was like I saw the arcade machines and stuff with like, I think it was Mortal Kombat 2 and it was Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. The first one wasn't there. So I haven't played the Mortal Kombat the first Mortal Kombat until like early next year. So I think I haven't seen what a fatality is until somebody pulled it off at the arcade, and I was just watching, just spectating, and like when I think somebody was using Liu Kang, they were playing against the computer, and then when the finishing message popped up, he pulled out the fatality, the screen went dark, and Liu Kang turned into a dragon and ate up the opponent's upper body, and my face was just like, the initial reaction to that fatality was like, oh my goodness. And I looked at, I think I asked the person, like, how'd you do it? Like, oh my God, it looks so sick. I was just freaking out. I was like, yeah, I'm like, oh my God, do it again, please do it again. And he did it like 3 more times. I was just so hyping up, like so hyper about that. It's like, I need more. That's so like the fatality and stuff is just like pretty sick. That's what made Mortal Kombat special. So I think around a year later, I think right around the time, like, it was Christmas of '97, where I got a Nintendo 64, and my parents, they bought like 2 games. They rent 2 games from the Blockbusters. So Blockbuster era was so special. Getting a game every weekend and stuff. It's just so, like, the times was just so simple, like renting like a different game and just trying it out or whatever. So the 2 games that my parents rent for me was like, I think one game was Mario Kart 64. I think it was Mario Kart 64, and another one was Mortal Kombat Trilogy. So Mortal Kombat Trilogy, I was like so hyped about that. Like, there's all 3 in one game, which is like stages from all 3 games, even a roster, multiple fatalities, and it was just pretty sick. So, and not only that, at the same time, it was like, this was the first Mortal Kombat game that I ever pulled out my first fatality. I pulled out my first fatality with Raiden. He did like a super uppercut, just a simple super uppercut. I don't know what I was doing. I was like holding the block, moving the D-pad, and all of a sudden the screen went dark. Uppercut the person's body and exploded to like a million bones. And I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. I did it. I pulled it off. I don't know what the actual input was. So after that, the rest was history. I started to learn combos. I started to learn the fatality inputs along the way. And not only that, like, I started having owning stuff like Mortal Kombat stuff, like the VHS of the Mortal Kombat movie, and even like the Tiger Hill, the Tiger brand electronics, handheld electronics and stuff. They used to have those back in the day. It was pretty sick. And also with the magazines that it had, like, hyping up, like every Mortal Kombat game in a magazine, it always hype it up, and it was just pretty sick. Like with Game Pro, Nintendo Power, especially like in the early days of like Game Informer. It was pretty sick. So I haven't really paid attention to the lore until like the 5th Mortal Kombat game, A Deadly Alliance. So I started to pay attention for that. And man, it was like, I can see why it was chaos. Because like with the first Mortal Kombat game, it's like it took inspiration from different movies like Big Trouble in Little China, Enter the Dragon, and Bloodsport. So all, like, I can see the inspirations behind that. It all started with a tournament, and it went complete chaos. And the fact that, like, how the franchise evolved and everything, and even as a person and stuff, I was so obsessed with it. It was just like, I finally, like, I wanted to, like, create content. Like, when I got older, there's like with YouTube videos and everything, it was like I wanted to, like, create content, like having to, like, with streaming and making videos and stuff. And not only that, like I was like really obsessed with like photography, so I ended up doing like self photography with like the masks that I collected, like with like well like the masks that I bought like from conventions or like even online stores. Like this is what I currently right now, and it's like I fell in love with it. And not only that, I interacted with people on social media also and stuff. It's just like sharing the same love of this franchise that I love so much. And I just felt like it's so like I live and breathe that series so much. I love it so much. And the fact that it's like with Mortal Kombat Trilogy, I still own a copy. This is a PS1, so I'm glad I own it. So it's an important part of me. So anyway, guys, that's what I have. That's how I got into Mortal Kombat and stuff. And thank you again, TabMock99, for having me the opportunity to tell my side of the story. So thank you guys for watching and listening, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.
So the question of how did I first discover Mortal Kombat? Well, I think I have... Well, I imagine it's quite a common story when first kind of getting introduced to the series. So when I was young, probably far too young to be playing it in hindsight, but, you know, not too much of a big deal, I'm sure. I played it alongside my brothers and my older cousin. He had a Super Nintendo at the time, and he had the original Mortal Kombat 3 Super Nintendo. And that was my first introduction to actually playing the game outright. You know, I just enjoyed it. It was something you'd play. It was kind of like token 90s, I suppose, where... you know, whatever like your older cousin or your older brother was playing was kind of like the cool thing to play, and it kind of gave the game that appeal, I suppose. But we loved it. Not quite shortly after, it was either this way round or the movie came first, but then we quickly watched the movie. I think we had it on VHS or it was on TV or something like that. But I remember either playing the game of, you know, MK3 and then watching the movie pretty much straight after, or we watched the movie and then played MK3 straight after. It was one or the other. I can never remember which order it was. But we really liked it, you know, because we thought the characters were cool. MK is a very kind of like, you know, nostalgic movie for a lot of us and still holds up really well to this day. And then soon after that, by I'd say about maybe a year after, we were on holiday, you know, with some family members. And I remember watching Annihilation for the first time. And that was cool to us because that had so many of the other characters in it, right? I was able to see Cyrax on TV, and even as a kid, Cyrax was my favorite character. So seeing Cyrax as a movie... or as a movie version, I suppose, was really cool alongside the other stuff. The movie hasn't quite aged as well, and, you know, hindsight does a lot for it. But, no, it was very much kind of like that initial kind of nostalgic go of playing MK3, watching the movies in tandem, and kind of just getting into the characters in the game from there, whilst playing alongside my brothers and my cousin. But fond memories, very much so. And I'd love to go and revisit it, but, you know, we're still playing it to this day, so I guess it's not so bad.
Hey, I'm TheThiny, a long-time Mortal Kombat fan. You can ironically say that Mortal Kombat has been a huge part of my childhood. Almost all of my childhood, with Pokemon taking on what's left. My dad is the eldest of his brothers. Therefore, my uncles were relatively young when I was a kid, so I used to play with them most of the time. Mortal Kombat was one of the games they used to play a lot, and whatever you see as a child gets stuck in your head. Therefore, you see Mortal Kombat being stuck with me throughout my adulthood as well. My first entry to Mortal Kombat was Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, which we used to play on an emulator called MAME. Because of that, UMK3 will always be my favorite MK. The thing that set the stone for me in the Mortal Kombat world is the finishers at the end of the round. I found it rather unique that you are allowed to continue the fight even after the match is over. Something that you couldn't do in Street Fighter or Virtua Fighter, for example. Given that, and the release of Mortal Kombat Trilogy on the PlayStation 1 made it so that there's no way for me to escape the Mortal Kombat world. When I used to go back to my home country, visiting my relatives and what so on, the only fighting game that we used to play was Mortal Kombat 4, and it was the best game in their opinion. So you can say Mortal Kombat has a family love where I come from, so there's no way for me to not feel the same. Because of the technology advancements coming late to my country, I skipped the entire PlayStation 2 and the 3D era of Mortal Kombat and jumped directly from Mortal Kombat 4 to Mortal Kombat vs DC Universe. although the latter wasn't well received by the public, or so I've seen, but it was a new game to me, and as a kid, seeing more of your favorite game is always a good thing, so you can say I loved the hell out of that game. Q 2021, and I'm still here going strong and not feeling the MK love fading away.